about 1.5 years ago about basically a commodity chain analysis of animal products. I was like, yeah, sure, I can do a 5 to 10 minute presentation about this. Turns out it's not really that easy to take a 25-page paper and reduce it down to a 10-minute presentation, so I might go slightly over time and talk for maybe 12 or 13 minutes. I hope you can still follow along because I've dropped lots of relevant information from it. The paper is basically about developing an argument about the alienation of consumers from the exploitative practices of food production and linking that to empirical implications of animal agriculture in industrialized societies. And it ends with a call for consumer de-alienation. And from there, I sort of want to take it to activism on campus and how we could actually contribute and put some efforts into de-alienating students from being ignorant towards the production processes of the food they consume. So I want to start with 2 quotes from Angela Davis that she delivered at public speeches at the University of California, University of California campuses in spring of 2012. And the first one says, "Food is one of the next major arenas of struggle. I'm sometimes really disappointed that many of us can assume that we are these radical activists, a provocation considering the title of this conference, but we don't know how to reflect on the food that we put in our own bodies. We don't realize the extent to which we're implicated in the process of capitalism by participating uncritically in the food politics offered to us by the great corporations." And in a very similar context, a week prior to that, she said, "This is a sign of the danger of capitalism, how capitalism has colonized our minds, the fact that we look no further than the commodity itself, the fact that we refuse to understand the relationships that underlie the commodities that we use on a daily basis." So, what is the phenomenon that we're talking about here? Basically, throughout its history and evolution, humanity has mostly depended on the use of animals. And so it does in certain contexts today as well. Think about people living in poverty who are in need of consuming animal products simply for the lack of alternatives. Think of Inuits in polar regions, the Mongolian steppe, etc. But in so-called advanced societies, so let's say industrialized postmodern societies, consuming animal products is no longer a necessity, no longer a nutritional necessity, but basically a choice. And a choice that implies lots of destruction. So since the mid-20th century, due to the diffusion of low-cost synthetic vitamins, pesticides, antibiotics, and air filtration systems, the indoor-rearing of animals has not only become the cheapest, but also the most widespread form of meat, dairy, and egg production. Factory farms have increasingly driven small-scale farms out of business due to their ability to operate at higher profit margins, and that sort of results in 90 to 99% of today's animal products being put out by what I like to refer to as an agricultural industrial complex, which means vertically disintegrated production processes in a segmented global commodity chain that involves all these different segments from inputs to production all the way over distribution to marketing and consumption and disposal in the end. Now, there's certain consequences related to that mode of production. And these relate to value creation and exploitation. And this would usually be the part where it could get really illustrative with how those modes of exploitation work in each step or each segment of the commodity chain, and where I could present all those horrible pictures and videos from factory farms, slaughterhouses, etc. But since I don't have time for it, I'll basically give you some bullet points just to illustrate the point. So the exploitation of animals can be exemplified by just imagining the conditions under which they are kept, the mutilation that they experience through pseudo-veterinary treatment, the stress put on animals' bodies as effects of genetic modification, so basically animals putting up so much weight at, in so little time that their bodies collapse under the weight that they put on, the diseases that they're exposed to due to the bad hygienic conditions in factory farms and feedlots, and the injuries that are caused to them just for the way they're being treated by factory farm workers. And of course the stress that they're exposed to in the processes of transportation and slaughtering. The second main array here is the exploitation of human labor. Workers in factory farm are expected and required to perform extremely exhausting and stressful tasks at incredibly high to work long and flexible shifts throughout the week. And this all results in statistics that basically say that workers in factory farms and feedlots and slaughterhouses have rates of post-traumatic stress disorders 33 times higher than the average of blue-collar workers in general. Injury rates 3 times higher than those of blue-collar workers in general, and are subject to long-term health damages simply due to the bad hygiene conditions in factory farms and slaughterhouses. And the final point is the exploitation of the environment, which I guess most of you have already heard about. But animal agriculture involves the clearing of rainforest areas for basically planting and harvesting foodstuff monocultures. Animal agriculture is the #1 contributor to global warming due to the greenhouse gas emissions caused by it. It is very intensive in the use of fossil fuels for growing and harvesting foodstuffs, operating farms, running animal transportation, etc. And it also negatively affects the immediate surrounding areas of farms and feedlots due to river and groundwater pollution. Now the question I want to raise here is why these grievances are so poorly reflected by consumers, and why so many consumers remain ignorant or indifferent about the implications. How does this thing come about? Basically, market trade requires that a quantitative interoperable value is assigned to products, which is referred to as the exchange value expressed in a monetary price. Thereby, products are cognitively divorced from their origins of labor and labor value exploitation, so the social relations of super and subordination between humans, and one could also say between humans and animals and humans and the environment, they were important to the production of the product in the first place. And thereby, these subjective social relations of production are continuously replaced by the objectified relations between commodified and randomly exchangeable products. And as a result, commodities do not only lose their qualitative distinctiveness and differences, but they are also perceived as carriers of inherent value, while the recognition of the real source of value creation disappears from consumers' minds. Hope this makes sense. Why is this so effective in the context of animal products and animal agriculture? Basically, people are encouraged to focus on the price because the exchange values of the monetary price that we're talking about here is kept at artificially low levels, mostly for 2 factors: externalities, which means the social costs that are involved in the production process, just think of the greenhouse gas emissions, are not really paid for by anyone other than the people that in the long run will have to bear the negative consequences of global warming. So basically, social costs are being socialized here, while individual benefits are privatized by the producers. At the same time, animal products, or animal agriculture in general, receives lots of government subsidies, which helps keeping prices at an elusively low level. Second, consumers are basically cognitively divorced because there's from the production process, that people are being alienated from the production processes by this mechanism, by this mode, described by the fetishism of commodities. I think it's a necessity to de-alienate people from the production processes and have them reconnect to the way the food they consume is being produced. And that again can be highlighted by a second part from the quote that I initially cited from Angela Davis, which reads, "The lack of critical engagement with the food that we eat demonstrates the extent to which the commodity form has become the primary way in which we perceive the world. We don't go further than what Marx called the exchange value of the actual object. We don't think about the relations that that object embodies and that were important to the production of that object." I think that would be really revolutionary, to develop a repertoire, a habit of imagining the relations, the human relations and the non-human relations of all the objects that constitute our environment. How is this relevant for activism on campus? That's like the final part of the talk today. I think it really stresses the need for raising awareness and performing some educational work about the implications of animal agriculture. I could give you 2 examples on how this could work. First would be a theoretical part that sort of introduces people, students in this setting, to the grievances of the production processes in factory farms and slaughterhouses. And one thing we did while I was studying abroad in Berkeley for a year with the Berkeley Organization for Animal Advocacy was that we would set up a screen on campus and incentivize people to watch a 4-minute educational video. The incentive that we used at the time was $1, which I thought was so weird, but we were funded by Mercy for Animals, so it's basically the only incentive we could use. So basically we set up a couple of screens on campus, told people they would get $1 if they watched a short 4-minute video, which was from farm to fridge, a video with undercover footage from factory farms. That is quite shocking. And then we would simply have people reflect on what they saw and have they themselves develop the thought on how they're sort of involved and responsible for the pictures they saw on screen. And that was actually quite an effective strategy of introducing people to the commodity chain and the production processes of animal products, and I think it worked reasonably well. And I imagine that could work quite well if we simply set up a computer, like a laptop or something, next to the food co-op stall or other stalls by societies that would be involved in taking part in this sort of educational work, and simply incentivize people by, say, giving them a discount of the food co-op stuff that we sell, or maybe like a free avocado or whatnot. And better than $1, right? And simply have them watch like a similar 4-minute video, and then engage in some talk with them about the things they saw and the emotion that invoked in them. And I guess other strategies could be just to give talks, do some sort of flash mob action that sort of illustrates the suffering involved or caused by animal agriculture, do some film screening, like more of the general educational stuff, but there are lots of actions that could be taken. I think the second part that would be quite useful is to actually introduce people to alternative modes of production. So that was another thing we did in Berkeley on Meat Out, which is I think like a global day of celebrating vegetarianism and veganism. We basically handed out free vegan food samples to people to introduce them, especially to fake meats, good fake meats, to sort of show them there's nothing that they would lose in terms of taste or deliciousness of food if they opted to refuse to eat meat, right? And this would be like a more immediate step that could be taken. Like the more long-term step then would be to actually fight and campaign for more vegan and sustainable options in the restaurants and the SU shop on campus, which I believe Natalia has already attempted to do last year and was not overly successful. But maybe you can say a couple of words about that. So basically these are the 3 steps that I think could be taken in terms of activism on campus and presentation.